इन्नल्लाह मलाइकतु युसल्लूना अलन नबी या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू सल्लु अलैहि वसल्लिमु तस्लीमा।
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونستعينه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. I begin this khutbah as we begin all of our khutab of Jumu'ah with a reminder to all of us to foster the fear of God in our hearts. Taqwa of Allah is the most important quality that we're called on to develop within ourselves. So we're always conscious of Him, always fearful of displeasing Him, aware of what He is pleased and displeased with. Today, I'll start with a question and then I'll introduce the topic I want to talk about. If I were to ask you, what is the worst sin that Allah is most severe with in the Quran, that He speaks about and He really puts a lot of emphasis on how terrible it is, how evil it is, how much harm it causes, so what comes to your mind? Think of those different sins. What would you think is the worst sin that He is most angry at? So maybe shirk, maybe you think of murder, rape. There's so many sins we could think of that Allah, zina, alcohol. They're things that He speaks about in the Quran and says these are terrible sins. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. He says it's a great sin. He doesn't say it's the worst sin necessarily. I'm not speaking in terms of how bad the sin might be, but the one that He's most severe with in the Quran actually. So Allama Tabatabai makes this observation that there are two things out of all the sins you can think of that Allah is most severe with in the Quran, that He really puts a lot of emphasis on how evil they are and calls on us to avoid these and treat them as satanic, evil things that are destructive to the human life. One is under this title of Tawalli A'da'id-Din, having alliance, having sympathy for, allying yourself, helping those who are enemies of God, which is a very broad concept. Shaitan, of course, is at the head of that, but there's shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. Right, so we have evil people as well as the evil jinn who are doing so much evil. And if we are to ally ourselves, help them, aid and abet them, any of those kinds of associations we might have with the enemies of God, then Allah is very much, of course, against that, and He calls on us to avoid that with all of our might. But that's not what I want to speak about. That, again, there's so many different parts of that. The second thing that He is very severe with is riba. The two sins that Allah is most severe with in the Quran. One, you can understand, I think it makes common sense that He would be against allying yourself with the enemies of God. That's clear. The second most heinous sin that He wants us to avoid is riba, interest. Interest-based lending, usury. So I want to focus my talk today on this because I think it's something that we read in the Quran. I'll share several of the verses. There are four sets of verses that speak about riba in different ways. And of course, we read this, we know it's haram. Yet, even as Muslims, our lives are steeped in riba. And of course, society at large and the world economy at large is so entangled with riba that it's practically, perhaps you could say, it's impossible without a total revolution of everything, without upturning everything, destroying so much, and then rebuilding it in the pattern that Allah wants us. It may not be possible. fine. At the global level, if it's not possible, then that's in the hands of Allah, in the hands of His Imam, to come and destroy a system and build a system according to His will. But there are levels of interest, transactions that are in our hands to use or to avoid. And so we have to reevaluate our own finances, our own way of even thinking about the world and how money works, so that we can align ourselves with this standard that Allah has put down, that riba is one of those most evil things, that is the most destructive to human society, that Allah is most severe with in the Quran. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The school year has begun, and so our Unity Academy children will also be joining us. I think they've already come, or they'll be coming. So they are going to be teamed up in pairs of boys or pairs of girls, and so those pairs should be allowed to sit next to each other, and then on either side of them should be an older man or older woman. So, but let's not have the two pairs sit next to each other. So the two pairs of girls, if you can, like two of you can switch. That way you have an adult between the two pairs. But allow the two pairs to sit together. That way you have an older and a younger, and they can guide each other and help each other to behave themselves in the proper etiquette of the masjid. Allah speaks about riba in 4 different parts of the Quran. The first place where He mentions it is in Surah An-Nisa, where He is speaking about the Bani Israel, the Jews, and how treacherously they dealt with Allah and His prophets. So we know that Jewish law is very strict. You could almost say unreasonably strict. Right? Allah's law for the Jews is stricter than He would have normally wanted for them. Allah doesn't come and just make our lives difficult with the law. The law that He legislates for us is for our benefit. He is giving us a roadmap so that we understand what are the pitfalls, what are the good things and the bad things in this world that Allah has created and He's put us in. He knows it best. He knows what He wants us to accomplish in our life, and so He gives us a roadmap which is called Sharia, which tells us what's good and what's bad and what we should do and how we should live our lives. And it's guidance. It's guidance to help us to live the life that He wants us to live. He doesn't want just to make our lives difficult. Let me just play with them. Let me just toy around with them. Let me just make something haram for them just to make their lives difficult. He doesn't do that, of course. He's not mischievous. He's there compassionate, trying to help us to live our lives in the best way. But sometimes what happens, and what happened historically with the Bani Israel, they were so treacherous with Allah, they were had such bad intention and dealt in such a bad way with Allah, that Allah actually made their law more and more difficult for them as a result of their acting in the way that they did. And so in this part of Surah An-Nisa, He goes through and mentions all of the crimes of the Banu Israel. What did they do? And as a result, why did Allah make the law harder for them? So one of the things that He enumerates there is that they, despite the fact that Allah had forbidden them to interact with riba, to lend and take more from the borrower than they lent in the first place. Right? That's what riba is. There's 2 kinds of riba. One kind we don't really deal with anymore because we're not in a barter system. It's not most Muslims don't even know about it, and it's not too irrelevant to our lives. So I'll leave that one. But the obvious one that we are all aware of is lending. I lend you $10, and I tell you that when you pay me back tomorrow, you're going to pay me $11. That's riba. The $1 that I'm taking from you in excess of what I lent to you is usury, is riba, is haram. It doesn't have to only be money. Instead of $11, may I say, no, pay me the $10 back, but go mow my lawn as well. That service that I'm making you also pay in addition to what I lent you, and I'm stipulating that in the loan, that is riba. Even if it were something minor, I simply, you can think of it minor, the smallest thing. If I say I'm going to lend you $10 and then you have to, for instance, I don't know, say salam to me tomorrow, or do even a trivial thing, if I stipulate that excess to what I lend you, that's riba, that's haram. So the Jews were also told that this is haram, don't do it, don't partake in it. But they are actually infamous in human history as the moneylenders of humanity. The ones who have always lent money, still, they're the ones who founded the banking systems of the world. They're the ones who lead and run the banking systems of the world. And they're the ones who have, despite the fact that they were Bani Israel, the children of Jacob alayhi salam, they have partaken and actually taken this to all new levels and are always thinking of new, better ways to take money from people without doing any work on their own. Simply give them money, and when they pay it back, they have to pay more than what I lent them. So because of this, Allah says, بِأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ. Because they took interest when they had been forbidden to take interest, Allah made their lives harder and harder for them. And to the extent that even you and I, if we were to look at some of their laws, we would think this is impossible. Why would Allah make it so hard for them? He wasn't doing it out of some sort of malice from His side. He was doing it as a punishment for them because they were playing around with His commandments. That's one place. So now we know historically, as long as there were prophets of God, then this usury was forbidden. In the Islamic era, in the Prophet's time, it's not the case. Sometimes people look at the way the Quran deals with things and we think that maybe Allah slowly made things haram. This is a misunderstanding of the Quran. Sometimes Muslims will think in terms of alcohol, for instance, that, at first it was halal, and then slowly Allah made it a little bit, makruh, for instance, and then He said, no, don't do it when you're praying, and then finally He said, no, it's haram. That's not the case. Alcohol is anathema to religiosity and anathema to humanity. What is the most fundamental quality that we have that makes us godly? It's our intellect, our aql. The only asset that we have that differentiates us from other creatures of God, from all the animals of God, is our aql, our ability to understand, to learn, to differentiate between good and bad. And the thing that destroys that compromises that, is intoxication. Any sort of compromising of our intellect, this is the worst thing we can possibly do. This is the most senseless thing we can do. Any other faculty you compromise, you'd be better off. Your intellect itself, if you compromise it, then you're left with nothing. You're an animal. You don't know what's right and wrong. You can't control anything. You have none of your faculties that keep you on the right path are intact. Never would Allah ever allow for His human beings to intoxicate themselves. What happened is that He slowly unveiled His prohibition. Not that it was permitted and then He prohibited. It was always prohibited from day one. Even from day -1, all the way from the beginning of Adam alayhi salam. Not only that when Rasulullah came, then it was prohibited from day one. Even before him, as long as there are prophets, so as long as there are human beings on earth, it's been prohibited to intoxicate yourself. But in the Quran, Allah slowly revealed the prohibition. First in common sense ways, that you should stay away from all sorts of sin. And then slowly He said, one of those sins is alcohol. And then He reminded them that when you're praying, make sure you're not inebriated when you're praying. Not that you could drink when you're not praying, but just to show how silly it is to think that you can come to God and speak to Him from your heart and with your mind intact when you're inebriated. So like that, it's not the case that it was first halal and then He slowly made it haram. With riba also, it's not that it was first okay to take interest and then slowly He made it prohibited. From day one, even before Islam, it was always prohibited, and the Quran simply kind of ramps up its unveiling of the law against interest. So one of the verses, the second set of verses that speaks about riba, just uses the term, but not actually for riba itself. So we have a set of verses from Surah Ar-Rum. Recite wa salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The verse in Rum, verse number 39 says, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِّبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. What grant you give that it might grow while in people's wealth does not grow with God. But what alms you give seeking God's pleasure, it is these who are the recipients of manifold recompense. So Allah uses the word riba, but what he's talking about is something different. From ahadith we understand that what he's talking about is not lending and demanding interest. In this verse, he's talking about something different. If you were to give a gift, right, giving a gift is fine. It can be even a virtuous act. There's one time when I give a gift to you and it's out of goodwill. I'm giving it to you out of generosity, just to show appreciation, friendship. I come over to your house, I give a gift. It's a special occasion, I give a gift. Perfectly fine, wonderful. There's another time when I give a gift, but my intention is, when it's my time to receive the gift, I hope you give me more than I gave you. I'll give you $100 at this particular occasion. Next year, when you feel indebted now to me and you have to give a gift, hopefully you'll give me $200. And that's my intention. I'm thinking of what you'll give me. I don't demand it, I don't require it, but that's my intention. That's what I have in mind. Or I lend money. Again, lending money is something that's very much encouraged in Islam. وَمَن يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who will give a qard hasan to Allah? Not to Allah, Allah doesn't need your money, but for Allah's sake to the needy or to good causes. He calls on us to lend. This term, just as a side note, people in Urdu and Farsi, people kind of slaughter the term. It becomes qard hasana, qarz hasana. That's incorrect. Grammatically, it's incorrect. Qard hasan, a good loan. It's not hasana. It's qard hasan. وَمَن يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Somehow that in Farsi Urdu became qarz hasana. And so that's a kind of a Frankenstein of the original. It's been obliterated into Farsi and Urdu because things oftentimes they lose their original shape in Arabic. So qard hasan is the correct term. He wants us to give loans to each other. But what if I give a loan? I don't demand interest. I don't make a stipulation that when you pay me back, you'll pay me back more. But that's my intention. That's my hope. I'm going to lend you the $10 hoping that when you pay me back, you'll pay me back $12. So my intention here is not a godly intention. It's a selfish intention. Even though I'm giving you a gift or I'm lending you money, but my intention and what I hope to get out of it is something self-interested. So Allah says that at most what you can expect from this kind of a gift or this kind of a lending, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِّبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ. This gift that I give you, this loan that I give you, hoping that it will increase while it's in your possession and you'll give me more than I gave you in the beginning. فَلَا يَرْبُو عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. There's no value to that. There's no increase in God's eyes. Allah is not going to give you any reward for this particular gift or this loan that you've given. This is not a qard hasan. This is a qard, like selfish, or self-interested. So the reward you get will be the $2 extra you get because you were hoping he'll give you $12. He gave you $12. That's the end of your reward for that particular loan. Nothing with Allah. On the Day of Judgment, this loan will not come forward as one of your good deeds. It's not haram. So let me just clarify. We are not allowed to give a loan and stipulate that the person give more. That's haram, that's riba, which is forbidden. We are encouraged, if I lend you some money, it is mustahab, it is recommended that when you pay me back more than what I give you. It's recommended. Not for me I have no right to demand it, that would be haram. And this verse is telling me I shouldn't even expect it or hope for it. But as the borrower who's now paying back the loan, it's recommended, it's a virtue for you that instead of just paying me back exactly what I gave you, to show some appreciation also to the person and give them something extra, an extra gift, either extra money, whatever you borrowed, add some more to it when you give it back, or some other token gift, some appreciation. So that's a recommendation for the borrower to give more when he pays back the loan. But what Islam is teaching us is, first of all, you are not allowed to demand it and stipulate that in the loan lending contract. And this verse is saying, even if you want to have virtue and you want reward from Allah for the loan, don't even expect or hope or have any sort of thing in your mind that the person will pay you back more. You're giving it for Allah's sake, and your reward is with Allah, whether or not this person even pays you back. And one of the interesting parts of Qard Hasan is that you have no leverage to demand the money back from the person you've lent it to. You lend the money, and it's on that person's own kind of a conscience that he's going to pay you back. And if he can, he'll pay you back. If he can't, you have no leverage to go after him and seize his assets and call the collections or anything like that. No, you have no recourse in the dunya to take that back from that person. What does Allah give us in return? We know that if you do a good deed, مَنْ جَاءَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا. If you do a good deed, Allah promises that He'll give you 10 times the reward. But when it comes to Qard Hasan, there's a hadith from the 6th Imam, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that it's written not just anywhere, on the gateway to paradise, there's a sign saying, regular good deeds, they get 10 rewards, but a Qard Hasan gets 18 rewards. So this particular good deed, Allah is willing to, He wants to encourage it, He wants to incentivize it. So what He does is He says that I'll give you even more reward than any other good deed that you do. The other good deeds, 10 times the reward of what the kind of standard rate is. But for a Qard Hasan, He's willing to almost double that and give you 18 times the reward for a Qard Hasan that you give. So that's the second set of verses that we have. Now this verse is not talking about riba, it's not talking about interest-based loans, but it's using this term. He's saying this kind of a gift where you hope for more, this kind of a loan where you hope for more, this is basically riba. Spiritually it's riba. It's self-interested, it's selfish. You're not doing it for that person or for God, you're doing it for yourself. And for a dunyawi self. It's not that I'm doing it because I want reward. That would still be that's still a godly intention. I want it because Allah will give me reward. That's selfish, but it's selfish in the framework that Allah wants us to be selfish, where we're looking out for our eternal soul, not our dunyawi interests without any regard for our eternal soul. So the fact that the Quran early on in Surah Rum, which is a late Meccan surah, is using riba as a bad word to refer to this bad intention that you have when you give this gift in this way or this loan in this way, shows that riba is bad already in the consciousness of the Muslims. Allah is using riba as a way to demean this kind of an act. Don't do it. You're expecting more. This is riba. Don't do it. Then the first verse where He actually explicitly forbids riba comes in Surah Ali Imran. He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَأْكُلُوا الرِّبَا أَضْعَافًا مُضَاعَفًا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ وَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So this verse in Ali Imran, which is a Medinan surah, this is a surah that comes down after the Battle of Uhud. So the 3rd year of the Hijrah is when this surah is finally revealed. Here now He's explicitly forbidding riba. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu la ta'kulu riba. Don't consume usury. Then He uses this phrase, ad'afan muda'afa. Don't take usury doubled and redoubled. So sometimes people get misled by this verse and they think, oh, this is not talking about interest. This is talking about exorbitant interest rates. And sometimes amongst Muslims you hear this, oh no, there's nothing wrong with interest. That's just the normal way things work. What's wrong, they'll say, is this ad'afa muda'afa, for me to charge exorbitant interest. A 5% interest rate, no problem. A 2% interest rate, wonderful. But these loan sharks, and credit card companies, 27% interest, that's ridiculous. That's ad'afa muda'afa, that's riba. The Sharia says no. Even the slightest amount, even an insignificant amount of increase, like I mentioned, even a service, even a favor, I'll give you this $10 if you'll go and park my car for me. Just the fact that I'm demanding even that minor service from you in addition to paying me back the $10, this makes it riba and haram. So why does it say ad'afa muda'afa is forbidden? Don't do this kind of riba, because that's the natural consequence of opening the door to riba. Once you create a system where the person with capital can do absolutely no work, build nothing, do nothing, just because he has the capital, now he can use that capital to take advantage of the disadvantaged position of other people. I'm not going to build something for the poor person. I'm not going to, feed the person. I'm not going to do anything and make something, create something in this world. I'm simply going to take advantage of that person's disadvantaged position. They don't have the money to buy the house. They don't have the money to do something, and they need some money. I'm going to twist their arm now and say, okay, I'll lend you the money to go and feed your family. But tomorrow when you pay me back, you got to pay me back more than what you took from me today. How evil is that? The person was poor to begin with. He was poor yesterday when I lent him the money. And now what have I done? I fed him for a day, but I put him into a deeper hole than he was in when he first came to me with his need. I haven't created anything. I haven't done anything. Let me build something with the money I have. Let me invest it. Let me create a company. Let me farm. Let me do something where I'm making something, creating something, doing services for people, and make money off of that. That's the way Allah wants us to make our money. Taking the blessings He's given us, building something, creating something, doing something, and then selling it to people who need that, and that's wonderful. That's actually highly recommended. That's exactly what we're supposed to do with our lives. We're not supposed to make our money off of the disadvantage of other people. And we go and become a slumlord and become manage public housing and things like this and make money off of people who can't afford housing. People who are poor and need a loan, instead of lending it and getting them back on their feet and helping them, I'm creating more need in them, more poverty in them, because I'm demanding more from them than they had. I'm demanding from them something they didn't even have yesterday, and now they have to not only give me that back, but give me more back. It's a downward spiral that I'm putting them in as the lender. I'm creating this downward spiral for them where they can never escape from that. And that's the reality of the majority of people in the world today, is that they're in this downward spiral in their lives. It's the very few who have that capital, and those who have the capital keep on building more and more until they're like, we can't add enough zeros and we're running out of words, so we're at billionaires now, then we have to come up with other words to talk about the people at the top. There are very few who are like that, and they're only like that. The only way they can be like that is if they've lived a life of dhulm and gathered this wealth from the labors and from the difficulties that the poor people of the world have endured. And this is what Allah is trying to stop by saying, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu la ta'kulu riba ad'afan mudha'afa wattaqullah la'allakum tuflihun. And He says, wattaqun nara allati u'iddat lil kafirin. What's the punishment He promises, He threatens the usurer with? He says, I built a fire in hell specifically for those who reject me. For the person who says, I don't believe in God, I don't follow God, I don't accept anything He tells me to do. For those kinds of stubborn, hard-headed, evil people, He's built a special place in hellfire for them. So when He's threatening the one who does usury, He says, leave off usury, or if you don't, then you're headed for the hellfire of the kuffar. You might be Muslim, you might be Shi'i, but if you partake in riba, then you're headed for the hellfire that is prepared for those who reject God altogether. You can't say, but I was Muslim, but I was Shi'i, but Imam Hussein. None of that matters because you are violating Allah's law at a more fundamental level. Those extra credit points don't hold if you haven't done the real work of avoiding these major sins. And for us, we think, okay, yeah, I can avoid murder, no problem. I can avoid rape, and I can avoid, bombing people and destroying people. Those seem very easy for us to. We're not tempted to fall into those kinds of sins. But what Allah cares about more, and what He is threatening worse punishment for, what He is putting more emphasis on in the Quran than those crimes, not to diminish those, but what He Himself is saying is worse than that, is riba. And for many of us, this is a daily sin that it's just part of our life. This is the way we live our lives, is through riba. We are lending, we are borrowing, we're working for banks whose entire business model is riba. We're working in corporate America in finance sectors where the entire business model is based on riba. The best money to be made is in riba. And so we think that if we can do this, at least we'll be rich, then we can do good with the money that we get. Allah doesn't want that kind of money. إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Have some taqwa first, then Allah will accept it from you. He doesn't need dirty money from fasiq people. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let me stop there. I'll share one more verse with you in the second khutbah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwal abtar. Salawat. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى علي بن أبي طالب وعلى فاطمة الزهراء وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. Once again, I call on all of us to foster taqwa within ourselves. There's so much temptation in the world, and that is how Allah has created it. And that the sin is oftentimes more appealing than the obedience to God. And so we're in dire need in all of our individual lives and our societal life to foster taqwa within ourselves so that we are our own policemen. Islam doesn't rely on some external force to come and police our lives and see, did you pray, did you fast, did you avoid this sin, did you do that sin? We are our own policemen, we are our own guardians to make sure that we are doing the best that we can and we are obeying Allah's law, and we are always on our own case, constantly repenting, seeking forgiveness for our shortcomings and trying to stay in line with what Allah wants from us. The last set of verses that where Allah mentions riba in the Quran is in Surah Al-Baqarah. So after legislating it in Surah Ali Imran and saying لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة, there's some people who didn't listen to that, who maintained their rabawi loans. They had lent money to people on interest, and the verse came down saying, don't do this. And they said, oh, but my capital, I already have this agreement, let me be grandfathered in so I can maintain that loan, for instance. And they kept up with the riba. And so in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah comes and He, with more severe words, He talks about riba one more time. He says, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا لَا يَقُومُونَ إِلَّا كَمَا يَقُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. Those who devour usury do not traverse life but as one deranged by the devil's touch. He says a person who deals with riba, he lives his life in insanity. Like someone, imagine a person who's mentally compromised, who's insane, whose mind is not working, how they would bumble through life. Not able to walk straight, not able to make any good decision, not able to know what's right and wrong, no standards in their life. That kind of a person, he says, that's the person who deals with riba. That's the end of it. That's where you end up, with that kind of destruction of your moral compass. We don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore. He says, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. The evidence for this, he says, is in their statement. They may not say it, but this is what they're thinking, that trade, commerce, is just like usury. It's hard to, I don't know if you connect with it right away. If you are dealing with usury, and I come and say, come on, leave off your interest-based lending and making your money through lending, engage in commerce. You have some skill, you can build something, you can make something, there's a service that you can fulfill. Build a business off of that. Do business. Make your money by making something. Engage in trade. Don't be a capitalist where you just sit back and use your money to make more money off of the poverty of other people. So you might say, what's the difference between these two? Riba is just like trade. You're telling me to leave off riba and to engage in commerce. What's the difference? The riba you want me to leave off is just like the business you want me to do. But the way Allah quotes it from these people, He switches it around. He says, no, they're so insane, they don't understand what's right and wrong anymore. Their standards are totally flipped. They don't even understand what's real and what's fake anymore. So they think that riba is actually the standard. This is how you do business. The way to make money is by lending money and charging interest. If you can't do that, then you can engage in some other business. Then you go for the trades. You become a plumber or an electrician, a farmer. That's for people who aren't smart enough to use their money, lend it, and make money off of the poverty of other people. Trump has said things like this. It's only dumb people who pay taxes. A smart person knows how to con people, how to wiggle their way through the law, find all the loopholes, do the least, get the most. Right? That's his standard. That's this يَتَخَبَّطُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. Someone whose standards of right and wrong are so upside down that they no longer use honest, hard work as the standard of what your life living should be. Honest, hard work is for the dumb people, they think. The smart people, they first are born into money, or somehow they get the money by hook or by crook, and then they use the money to make money. They don't contribute to the world, they don't build anything, they don't do anything. They just find the people who are poor and then extort them. Lend, take more. Lend, take more. Crush them, defeat them, push them into poverty, push them to the edge of existence where they can't even live their life anymore. And on the back of all that, I become a one-percenter. So that's how Allah speaks about these people. The verse goes on, I don't have time to go through the rest of it, but this is something that we have to reevaluate in our lives. Again, we may not be able to, and maybe it's not even reasonable to think that we can change the world. This is a global problem, this is a universal problem. The entire economy of the world is based in this now. So that's above our pay grade. Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, he will do what he has to do to destroy the system and build the system. That's his job. May Allah help him in that job. And if we are worthy, then we can be part of that process too, to rebuild a just system of economics. But what we can do is in our own lives. Don't partake in riba. Don't get into a career where you are a banker. You're working for a bank. You're working in a lending system. Don't be the accountant who is party to that, who is the bookkeeper who's recording those transactions. That's one of the prohibited professions. You are either engaged, you are the lender who is demanding riba, you are the bookkeeper, you are the one who is part of that whole system. Avoid these careers. There's so many wonderful, good, hard-working careers that you can live, you can do and make an honest living and a wholesome living. Allah will be happy with what you're doing. In our twisted sense, sometimes our culture says, oh, those aren't prestigious careers. I'll be embarrassed if my son is a farmer, a plumber, electrician, as though that's something dishonorable. I want him to be a banker. Oh, he's in finance. Now he's successful, now I feel very good. The verse goes on to say, if you refuse to leave off riba, then be on notice that Allah and His Messenger have waged war on you. So you can hold your head high. At what cost? Now you're an enemy of God. Allah hates you. Or you choose a noble profession where you're actually working and building and making and doing good things, treating people fairly, getting fair wages for what you do. Now you actually can hold your head high, not only in the dunya, but in akhirah. On the Day of Judgment, you can hold your head high and say, I did the best I could, I earned a living, I paid my khums and zakah, I raised my family on halal, I fed them with halal. I did my duty before you, Allah. So choose our careers better. If you're in a career that's riba based, get out of it. Even if that means upheaval in your life, get out of it. Don't put yourself in a position where Allah is waging war on you. And at the very least, when you're lending to each other, there's no interest between Muslims. So don't lend and then charge interest when you're lending to your family members, to your friends. Lend as qard hasan, your reward is greater. Your interest might be 4%, 5%, whatever it might be. If you charge interest, Allah is giving you not 18%, if my calculation is right, 1,800%. 18 times, is that right? 1,800% is the reward that Allah gives you. وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. They're the ones who are really raking it in. Who are making the greatest profit are the ones who give zakah for the sake of Allah. Zakah, again, it could be the loan. A qard hasan is also a kind of zakah. That's how you're going to rake it in and make the greatest profit, not through charging interest off the backs of poor people, but by lending money and lending it for God's sake, and Allah will be the one who backs that loan and who gives you not only in full, but 18 times the reward that you deserved. He's going to give that out of His grace. Allah, we ask you to shower your mercy and blessings on Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Have mercy on us and help us, Allah, to change our lives, to purify our lives of all sin, but in particular interest. Forgive us for what we have partaken of in the past, and help us to chart a new course in the future. Allahumma ighfir lil mu'minina wal mu'minat wal muslimina wal muslimat al ahya'i minhum wal amwat. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد